back. You're still watching Daybreak on this 4th day of June 2024. Let me introduce the panelists here. Kanyuthia Mutunga, Daktari, is the chairperson of the Agriculture Committee at the National Assembly. Good morning.
Good morning.
Mark Mwenje is the Deputy Minority Whip at the Azimio Coalition. Good morning.
Good morning, Sam. Thank you for having us.
It's good to have you. And David Ocheng is the Member of Parliament for Ugenya, but also sits in the Speaker's panel. Good morning.
Good morning, Sam.
It's been so long. Where have you been?
Well, I've been around. I'm babysitting. My baby turned 4 months 2 days ago.
4 months?
Correct.
That's good.
Yeah.
How is that?
It's fine. You don't sleep much, but it comes with the territory.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's an interesting experience right there. Mark, how have you been?
I've been good. We've been on recess.
Yeah.
I've been with the constituents back just here in Nairobi, in Embakasi West.
Yeah.
So it's been a good time to sit down, interact with my constituents, find their views on quite a number of things.
Yeah.
So it's been a month of just being around with the constituents. Looking forward to getting back to the House.
Yeah.
Conclude some important business there.
Great, good to see you. And I have to say, it's my first time to host you on
It is. It's your first time. I've been here
Yesterday,
not on Daybreak, though. I think I've been on other programs, but it's good to be here.
Karibu sana.
And I hope you'll be inviting me more often.
We'll see how today goes.
We'll see how today goes. That's fine.
Yeah, and Chairman, you've also been a bit quiet, and so much is going on in the agricultural sector, including what we witnessed on Saturday in Bungoma. How have you been?
I've been quite fine, Sam. I've been busy doing the part of agriculture budget. See, this recess is basically about budgeting.
Yep.
Besides, of course, also trying to finish up a lot of pending work. You know, we've been reduced to an investigating agency. So there has been so many issues to follow as a subsector.
Yeah.
And we wanted to push our legislative role, duty, during this particular period. So we've been doing a bit of, revising, looking at the proposed legislative proposals and trying to see how fast we can push them in the next, as the parliament opens.
Yeah.
Besides, of course, visiting the constituents once in a while and attending to other issues. I may not have been to Bungoma because we lost a former member of parliament. He's called Kaunyangi. And Martin Kaunyangi was a member of parliament for Nyambene South way back in 1966. And we had to bury him. So I needed to be there to make a statement on behalf of the National Assembly. Condolences
from all of us. And we'll be getting to that because you've said something interesting that you've been reduced to investigative agencies.
Yeah.
An investigative agency.
The committee has been doing investigations through. So
yeah.
Yeah, we started with the May subsidy program of 2022-23, which I believe is is in the under paper today. So we'll be laying back the second part of the report, rather the comprehensive part. We have done a preliminary report. So today we shall be giving the main report. And then after that, then the issues of fertilizer came up.
Yeah.
And then we had to go back again.
Yeah.
There were issues of sugar. We had to go back to the people. So we've been doing a lot of investigations in the last 2 years.
We'll get to that shortly from now. But the Daily Nation, harsh reality of new varsity fees, that students and their families are being forced to choose university courses they can afford rather than those they can, or rather those they qualify for and aspire to study. They're also complaining about the help not having the resources they need to be in a position to release to the learners, especially the first-year students who are the first to use the model, and they have already accumulated huge fee balances which are set to increase even further as they progress. Then another story of that tanker that we just highlighted in the news bulletin on the Standard, Ruto Gachagua TIF putting country in election mode. And there's something here, don't gamble with tax. Captains of industry are warning the government that tinkering with the taxation regime will lead to businesses shutting down, massive job losses, a further increase in cost of living, and failure by the taxman to grow tax collections, which negates the whole sense of collection. Dr. Kanyuthia, let me begin with you because there's been this ongoing conversation about the Ruto Gachagua TIF that you see the Standard there saying that it puts the country in election mode. And I'm just wondering, because It's not been so long for the current administration. Like you mentioned, you have so much work that you're doing in Parliament. There are some that feel that this is just a distraction that is being planted by the political class. What is going on from your perspective?
I tend to think we have lifted part of what we were promoting during the campaigns, the development period, because post-election we need to focus a lot more on development. But there were promises and slogans. I remember clearly that the 1 man, 1 vote, 1 shilling was featuring quite often when talking to people. But my perceived interpretation should be supporting people in what they are actually doing. And the version of guaranteed minimum return, to me, would be a better version to sell than 1 man, 1 shilling, 1 vote. Because 1 man, 1 shilling, 1 vote seems to discriminate to the extent that those who are not very many feel like the ones who are more in the country wants everything to go there. On the other hand, there is a constitutional provision of 1 man, 1 vote, which basically balances out on the strength of a voter, and that every voter is equal to the other, and the significance of the vote itself. But when the 1 shilling comes in, it talks about now distribution of resources. And this notion has not I don't think is one that is causing so much of noise. It is some of the pronouncements that have occurred in the recent past, which happen to suggest that we need to focus a lot more on who formed the government and their role in the whole formation of the government, and therefore the recognition of the fact that they played an important role. But that has also received a lot of reactions from other corners, and some of us, I believe, and I want to imagine, misinterpreting the same, and trying to think that somebody is trying to propel himself up, which I think is not the issue. The issue is, I think, I wanted to imagine that the Deputy President innocently has been speaking about 47% contribution to the vote by the Mount Kenya region, which I think is something that was notable, but has been misinterpreted to mean that the others are not important, and they also that it is 47% of the resources therefore should go to Mount Kenya region and so on. But if you look at the relative contribution even to the GDP, and also the economic background of the regions, there are very many other factors that you can look at and realize that whatever he says makes sense to a large extent.
Whatever he says is making sense. So that vote contribution of 47%, is it accurate? I'm not certain about those figures.
I have also not calculated to the vote.
Yep.
But I would imagine that you wouldn't be very strong on it if it was not accurate. On the other hand, this is a time when we need to unite Kenya, the entire country together, because post-election we should not be talking about some of those things. I think we need to be looking at how do we get everybody on board, and even how do we get the others who are in the opposition. In other words, how do we weaken the opposition fellows, get more of those who voted for them?
Yeah. Because
it doesn't mean that Mount Kenya region voted 100% to Kenya Kwanza. It was a proportion. And the other regions also, of course, need to be have their say. On the other hand, the issue of inclusivity in the entire development domain needs to reign. The Constitution is very clear. Article 10 is very, very clear on the principles of governance, where we're talking about patriotism, national unity, sharing of resources, devolution of power. Many issues that are very key to the people, to bringing people together. It talks about human dignity, the social justice, inclusiveness. People need to feel included.
Okay.
However, when we make harsh statements based on our background, sometimes it doesn't talk very well with nationalism and inclusivity. It makes people look like people look like they are a lot more interested in their own regions, and not necessarily. And I believe politics is about development. In Kenya, we interpret development in terms of politics. We are sharing almost everything at Parliament.
No, I'm hearing it. I'm looking at the figures because the latest statistics on the gross county product would show that Mount Kenya contributed 19.2% of the national GDP. So that's Mount Kenya counties. Then Nairobi itself is 27.5%. Rift Valley was 20.7%. Nyanza 9.5%, Coast 9%, Western Kenya 6%, Ukambani 5.4%, and Northern Kenya was 2.4%. So I don't know if those statistics would agree with what the notion has been.
There is the blank statistic and the per capita contribution that is also needs to be looked into, because that's a bit more realistic.
So what does that mean? Per capita
the
contribution
per person. In
by
terms
who?
of total contribution divided by the number of people.
No, I know I know what that is. I'm just wondering what you want to mean with that in this.
I want to mean that the figures per region are basically the contribution per region is based on the economic activities of the region. And it's based also on economic endowment of the region. Based on the extent to which the region wakes up to work and work to progress, and that I think is a lot more important than blanket the contributions you have raised.
So that other one, I mean, who calculates it?
It's a statistical. It's a statistic that is important.
Look, we're talking about the assertion that you didn't give it a percentage actually, that Mount Kenya region would appear to be contributing more to the national GDP.
No, I said significant contribution, and 19% is significant.
But it's still lower than Rift Valley, unless you want us to do an average of every county.
You know, the fact that Mount Kenya raises a voice doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that others also don't contribute.
Let me give you the top 6 counties. Nairobi County contributed 27.5%.
And we know who is in Nairobi.
Everybody.
Everybody is there, yes.
Can I just read?
And most of the major economic activities.
Sorry, let me just read the list. Kiambu County followed with 5.9%. Nakuru County was third with 4.9%. Mombasa County was fourth, 4.6%. Meru County, where Dr. Kanyuthia comes from, was 3.3%. Machakos County was 3.1%. And those top 6 contributed nearly half, because there was a total of 49.3%. I don't know if that helps that case, because there are many people that have said, even in previous election campaigns, that Mount Kenya contributes 60% of the GDP, which is not factual.
60% basically does not look at Mount Kenya outside Nairobi. It just talks about the central Kenya region. Contributes around 50% of the economy, of the GDP.
Sorry, say that again?
The central Kenya region, which includes Nairobi. Yes. Does contribute around.
Nairobi
50%.
is in central Kenya?
It's in the central part of Kenya, isn't it? It is. Nairobi is it outside? It is.
Sam, thank you, Sam. First of all, allow me to say hello to my constituents in Embakasi West, the early risers. I think the issue that you're trying to discuss with our chairman here for agriculture in terms of GDP, I am a member of parliament from Nairobi, and one of the things that we as Nairobi, we always feel as though we are marginalized in this country. And I'll tell you why. Because we contribute, you've just mentioned the figures, we contribute the highest in terms of GDP, but I'll tell you that we don't benefit. And despite the president got about 570,000 votes in Nairobi, if we are to be beaten by counties, I think from Mount Kenya it would be probably Meru and maybe Kiambu. Those are the only ones that would compete with us. But in terms of even development of what we've gained, we've not gained from the government as per the contributions we make for it to the GDP of this country. For instance, we don't have new roads being done by Kura, by Kenha, in here, in Nairobi, and it's one of the things that we feel that needs to change. One of the things that when we had budget going around Nairobi, we raised that issue, that you have to look at Nairobi differently from other counties, because not noting the fact that we contribute the most. This is the capital city. This is where all visitors to the country come here, and yet you can see there, with these floods, even the embarrassment that we faced as a country. But just to add on one of the things that you had discussed earlier within our Kenya Kwanza team, you know, they said Mutunga here mentioned that it is the intention to weaken the opposition. Luckily for us, our constitution provides that people can act either directly or through their direct elected representatives.
Right.
So you can have an opposition through the people directly. But more importantly, what we've seen that is happening even within between the president and the deputy president, I think the deputy president expected that the format of government and relationship would be the one the former President Uhuru had with the deputy president in his first term.
Right.
Where whenever the Uhuru wanted to engage the Rift Valley region, he would go directly to the deputy president then, was William Ruto, and he would be the one to make decisions.
Yep.
Remember, even when they were appointing cabinets together and all that, they were doing it in a united front, that it was the two of them. This president has done it differently. He has not chosen that if you want to engage a certain region, say from Mount Kenya, you don't go through the deputy president as it were before. He has chosen to work with various leaders, which I believe has caused this antagonism that you're seeing, because it means he can go to Meru and engage perhaps the CS there or the elected MPs there directly.
Right.
He can go to Murang'a and maybe use Dindi Nyoro directly, can come to Kiambu. The same thing with the majority leader, Kimani Ichung'wah. And that has been the pattern all over within Mount Kenya. I believe because of that, it causes a bit of discord, it causes concern. You can imagine you being the deputy president, you'd be concerned. Why am I not getting the same treatment that he had in his first term as deputy president? So I believe that is what you're seeing playing around.
Is it legitimate expectation for the deputy president?
Every politician harbors ambition. The three of us seated here, I can tell you, elected members of parliament, we have further ambition. We have thought of being a governor or being a president or being a deputy president. So the deputy president seated there, I can tell you with 100% surety, he has thought that naturally he is the second in command, he would ascend to the top. But it's not the way it's playing out to be. There's no guarantee. It's not the way that even the deputy president, with then William Ruto, when because at that time we were all in TNA and URP, we were all in Jubilee together. We all knew that once President Uhuru retires, the next person to take over was the deputy president, William Ruto. This is not the case. It doesn't appear to be heading that way. So he did have legitimate expectations, and he would, like any other politician. But unfortunately, I don't believe that is how that is the mind in which the president has. The president, I think, wants to keep it open.
Right.
And I think there are various leaders who've aspired to take over that same position after he retires.
Wow, interesting. Yes, let's listen to what the deputy president said over the weekend in some of the quotations that he made.
Aheshimiwa ya mwoka gicagi mukamoria kiuria murugamirire ha urumwe wa ruriri murugamirire ha ugai wa besha wa one man one vote one shilling. Wira wakwa ni guteithiriria president gutongoria Kenya nona angimuteithia gutongoria Kenya ni wira wakwa guikara ndiritho kurora maundu ma nyumba ino itu batikae kuhitana. Na hindi ciothe mungiona ngirite itakwaria mukamenya kahe kaundu gatarathie ki na ni mukinjui kungithie nyone gutirathie wega ni ndiriaria.
All right, we have the benefit of the translation subtitles there that would tell us what exactly he's saying, so I'm sure you've been able to read that much more, Cheng. But because you've been with this side of the alliance for close to 2 years now, what is this coming to, and why are we having to deal with such a situation? Are there preliminary issues that are never dealt with at the formation stage?
I don't think so, Sam. these are historical misplaced entitlements that must be dealt with. We have a country called the Republic of Kenya, not the Republic of Mount Kenya. We have one country that has all of us in it together. And Sam, let me tell you, there are countries in this world that have one single resource, a port like Djibouti, a port like Singapore, which is probably the mother of everything else in that country. Mm-hmm. So the idea that somebody contributes higher to GDP for me is baloney. It doesn't make sense. If you are to go historical, and I say this with deep respect to Mount Kenya, if you are to tabulate how much resources have gone to Mount Kenya since independence, from Kenyatta 1's presidency, mm-hmm. through Kenyatta 2's presidency, through Kibaki's presidency, Mount Kenya should be getting 1% of the budget every year, or even 2%, so that the rest of the country can also be able to survive. I mean, if you look at this government today, this one, unless you want the president to get his clothes off and give it to you, this government is run by the Kikuyus and Mount Kenya honchos. Totally. So this idea that you're going to blackmail the country and say that, you know, Mount Kenya this and Mount Kenya that. So what happens when the whole country then wakes up and says that it's now 41 against one tribe? Where will we go? We must learn to live together. You must learn to understand that you are building and running a country called the Republic of Kenya. And that's where I fault my deputy president. He's the deputy president of the country, not of Mount Kenya. And so it can't be. And you know, some things don't come to the light. But I tell you, the Kikuyu entitlement in this country is nauseating. It will make me vomit. It can't be that everything else, and I sit in the budget committee, and I've been in parliament now, this is my 3rd term, and if you look at the budget of every year, if it is dams, if it is boreholes, if it is roads, if it is education, the money going to Mount Kenya today is more than the one vote, one man, one shilling. I can tell you. And so they have to be careful. When someone insists on this one vote, one man, one shilling vote, and if he decided to do it, Mount Kenya will come out worse off. I can tell you that for sure. Because what these people are looking at is the money going to northeastern Kenya. That was sidelined for a long time. Money is going to Nyanza and western Kenya. This so-called GDP contribution is purely based on investments by the government using taxpayers' money. If you look at government investments in the Mount Kenya regions today, counties, Nairobi here, Kiambu, Murang'a, government investments that then bring back the money is huge compared to the government investments in the rest of the country. And so if we were to go historical and do an audit and say that those who have been getting more government money should get less, Mount Kenya will be worse off. Number 2, I think that as a country, one thing we've failed to do, where the rest are beating us, mm-hmm. is that we see each other first as tribes before we see each other as a country. But look, just let's give an example. Recently, when the fertilizer issue broke out, it was the whole country. When it rains on everybody. When it dries down, everybody. If our CBC doesn't work well, it doesn't work well for everybody. Mm-hmm. And so let's look at each other as a country. And I want to request my deputy president that we respect him. I would want him to go to Nyanza. I would want him to go to Western Kenya and say these things he says about Mount Kenya. No, he can't be doing this. And I believe that this whole razzmatazz that's going on, Sam, mm-hmm. is still just a fight for resources. Because the war that now goes on between the president and his deputy, and like the Honorable Mark Mwenja said, so if the president decides that he's going to leave the Honorable Gachagua and work with the Ndindi Nyoro, or work with the Chungwa, or work with Waiguru, it's still Mount Kenya. There's a game being played on the country. That every time they get to power, Kikuyu start fighting, we want this, we want that, and they fight among themselves. So at the end of the day, it's a zero-sum game. Kikuyus benefit, the rest of the country. I mean, look at the cabinet. How many Kikuyu ministers? How many Mount Kenya PSS? How many Mount Kenya CEOs? How many Mount Kenya deputy CEOs? Go to parliament today. How many Mount Kenya chairmen of committees? I tell you this. Western Kenya the so-called Western Province, has 45 constituencies, including Nairobi here. One chairman of a committee, one. Dan Wanyama, departmental committee. Nyanza, the whole region, 0 chairman of a departmental committee. When I go to Central, we have Kanyudia here. We have GK of transport. We have, he can name them for you. So if you're talking about resources, Mount Kenya should be the last person to complain, and all of us should be complaining about.
Let me ask you this. Yes. Because you're using 2 terms, Kikuyu, then Mount Kenya. I don't know.
It's the same thing.
I don't know why you distinguish.
Where I come from, anybody who is not, anybody, Ameru and Embu, Adaraka, as Luos, those are Kikuyus. That's Mount Kenya. Where I come from, that's how we. That is how we.
But at the national stage.
That is how. But so when I say Kikuyu of Mount Kenya, I mean the same thing.
Okay.
I mean.
I'm just saying. I get what you mean. I'm just saying that at the national stage, it is not factual.
Anybody. So Sam.
Just hold on, Mheshimiwa, because you also run the risk of causing some discomfort. So I'd rather we just talk about the regions.
Okay.
For the sake of this conversation.
Well advised.
But you're also speaking about resources sharing, that a lot of them would end up in Mount Kenya. Parliament, the National Assembly, represents the people of Kenya. Every constituency has a representative. How does that happen?
It happens. And let me just get a straight answer.
Yeah.
That's why we had CDF. Because the successive executive arms of government were not distributing money equitably. And that's why a member of Parliament said, no, let's stop this. Even if the executive will distribute money the way it wants, at least let every constituency get some money. That's how CDF came to be. So the only means through each constituency to get any good resources has always been the CDF since 2003. But will you leave it to the executive? And I've given you...
CDF is very little. How much is it now?
That's what I'm making. It's going to be around 180 million per year.
No, in total...
It's 2.5% of it.
It's probably 56 billion, going to 59 this year.
59
billion in the country.
So if you look at the country's budget of, for instance, this year, we're talking about 3.9 trillion shillings.
Yes. Yeah.
So these other resources are shared by the House itself.
No, I mean, that's why I said that history is very important. Parliament started budgeting only in 2013. And even then, because before that, it was executive budgeting, doing a budget and reading on the 15th of June, and it doesn't matter what it's in there. It's supposed to be a secret, like no one knows what is in that small bag. But it's also true, Sam. Something that is very, in my opinion, very wrong. The reason people fight so hard for the presidency, and the reason Mount Kenya, if you hear them talking very much that they must be president, is that it determines how resources are shared. It does. In Parliament, the reason you have majority and minority is that majority gets to have their way. And I've spoken about this even on the floor. And I've spoken about this in the budget committee where I sit. That the way we divide resources in this country is so skewed. And I don't fear saying this, that even in this budget that will be read next week, if you go into it, because you don't have the numbers to pull what we think should be equitable, if you look at the budget of water, and I invite you to do so, if you look at the budget of roads, and I invite you to do so, if you look at the budget, the kind of money that goes to, say, school infrastructure, for the last 12 years, and I don't mind saying this on TV, that for the 6,000 kilometer roads that have been done in the last 12 years, by Uhuru Ruto government, and now, 61% of them went to Central and Rift Valley. For the money for infrastructure, building schools, look at it again. Out of every 10 shillings that went out for building school infrastructure, 60% of it went to Rift Valley and Central Kenya. I say this because I know the facts and I've been in that parliament. The reason is that those who decide, those who have the knife that cuts these monies, are from these 2 regions, these 2 tribes, either the PS concerned or the CS concerned. This goes down to water. You saw there was a tiff some time back about water between the minister and the PS. It was about the same thing. So let us not hide the fact that the way you've distributed resources nationally in this country has been extremely skewed. Nyanza, where I come from, Western, this has been sidelined for a long time. And that's why people for a long time were fighting for Majimbo. So these are things that have to be addressed, so that we deal with them as a country called Kenya, not a country called Mount Kenya or a country called Western Kenya or a country called Nyanza. We have one country. Our interest should be to ensure that everybody who lives within the borders of this country is comfortable, is taken care of, feel that is part and parcel of this country. And if, Sam, even if your contribution is 0.01% and Mutunga's is 10%, we live in the same country. That's why you have the Constitution. Otherwise, then if we decided that you get according to how much you make, then it means that based on Mutunga's theory, 80% of the money should go to Central Kenya.
All right. I want us to take a short break. We'll come back and tie up this conversation because it's eliciting quite a bit of feedback. I can feel it. But stay tuned. You can write to us at Citizen TV Kenya at Sam Gichuku. The hashtag to use is Citizen Daybreak. We're back with more.